Yo, what's up? Let's make some UK bass music. The term UK bass has a few different meanings. Back in the day, UK bass was used as an umbrella term for the underground club music scene in the UK, encompassing dubstep, UK garage, house, and a ton of other genres. Prolific UK dubstep producer Scream used the term UK bass like this as a way to respectfully refer to other UK artists without branding them under a certain genre. But lately, the term UK bass has found a new meaning. The term UK bass now represents a newer style of bass music, with 4-on-the-floor kicks, syncopated hi-hats, and groovy synth-bass-led rhythms. It's the type of music that artists like Skepsis, Notion, and Chris Lorenzo have been making waves in. This style is pretty unique. Even though it has modern mixing and sound design, it still retains that early 2000s sound selection, directly inspired by those popular UK bass genres at the time. It uses the tempo and drums from house, the wompy bass lines of UK garage and dubstep, the drum breaks and Reese basses of drum and bass, and the vocal chops that are seen in all of those UK club genres. And in a way, it still represents the original definition of UK bass, and proudly wears all of its inspirations on its sleeve. So yeah, I'm going to be making a few UK bass inspired tracks and try to encompass these different styles in it. And as you can hear from my Yankee Doodle-ass voice, I'm not from the UK. I'm as American as apple pie, and I understand that I am a guest in this genre. This is just how I interpret UK bass, and I just wanted to make some cool tunes that hit hard. These are some songs that I listened to while I was doing research about this. Enjoy the video. First, beat. This beat is going to be a more traditional style of UK bass. I'm aiming for a sound with some funky wobble basses and some house-inspired drums. And for my track, we're going to start this beat at the magic tempo of 128 BPM. We're going to get the hardest stuff out of the way first, so I'm going to talk about the bass lines that I made in Vital. I'm using Vital in this video because it is free and it is awesome. And it's a pretty simple patch. It's just a square wave made in basic shapes, and I routed this triangle LFO to the level of the oscillator. Not very impressive, but it really comes to life with the effects added to it. I put a high-pass EQ, a multi-band compressor, a chorus with 8 voices but the frequency is frozen, a nice soft clip distortion, a low-pass filter with the LFO moving on the cutoff, and a flanger for a more metallic effect. Sounds much cooler now, but the effects don't end here. I added a few more EQs to bump some frequencies and to get rid of the lows, another compressor, fruity limiter for sidechaining, and finally spreader and reverb to expand the sound. But Praxi, why did you make a bass just to take out all of the low end? And that's because I wanted to add a more consistent sub bass that I'm just going to layer with the main bass line. I used another instance of Vital and I made a simple preset called the bass patch. It is just a sine wave with some compression, a little distortion, and a low pass filter. And with both of these sounds together, it's a match made in heaven. But that is not all for the bass line. For the second half of the drop, I wanted to add something else to complement the bass line, so I went back into the first Vital patch and added this saw wave with 16 voice unison, and it's playing at a whopping 4 octaves high. The level is also routed to the same LFO as earlier, so it should layer nicely on top. To make it play at certain sections of the song, I'm going to use an automation clip. And to activate an automation clip on a third-party plugin, you got to go right here and make editor thumbnail. And then you can make an automation clip for oscillator 2 switch. Next, I added the drums. I'm going for a simple 4-on-the-floor kick, a snappy clap, and some syncopated hi-hats with a little bit of swing to it. It gives the drums a nice classic house rhythm. And if you're ever needing any high quality drums, one-shots, or bass patches, you should definitely use Rocket Powered Sounds UK Bass Pack. Rocket Powered Sounds came through with their newest kit, the UK Bass Kit, filled with tons of high quality, professionally crafted, royalty-free sounds. Inspired by your favorite UK artists like Sick Dope, New Bass, and Hamdi. This pack has over 900 files including bass loops, drum loops, one-shots, midis, and bass presets for Serum and Vital. It has everything you need to get that unique UK bounce. I absolutely love this kit. The drum loops sound great and are super helpful in streamlining my workflow, and these bass loops can work as great one-shots or phrases in a song. And if you want to see how these sounds can come together, the UK Bass Pack comes with a demo track FLP, made completely out of stock plugins. Back in the day, I used to binge watch Rocket Powered Sounds tutorials on how to make basses, so it's an honor to say that I was able to contribute to this. All of the vital presets I made in this video will also be available in the kit, so you can amp up your production with some Rocket Powered Sounds. If you want to check out the UK bass kit, I'll have a link for it in the description. Next, I'm adding a hi-hat loop that I got from the pack as well. I added a high-pass filter and a stereo shaper and reverb. I also added some effect sounds for transitions like these cymbals, this bass one-shot, and some risers I made with Vital and 3x oscillator. The last sound I added was this vocal phrase that I got from the pack, and I chopped it up at certain points. I also added some effects to it like an EQ and a limiter to help it fit in the mix better, and a stereo shaper and reverb. And once we arrange everything, that is pretty much it. Here's the beat. Next, beat. For this next beat, I wanted to make something with a more high energy sound, something more modern with a metallic synth bass. I understand that the sophisticated wobble bass is pretty much a staple UK bass sound, and doing something different is straying more into the realm of bass house, but I don't know, I just wanted to make something cool. Gotta take chances to win. This project is gonna be a little bit faster than the last track. It's gonna start at 130 BPM. I started off with Vital and I made a few fundamental patches. This first one is a pretty quick Womp sound. It's two basic shapes, a little unison, both of the levels routed to the LFO, make it look like that. Also route the LFO to the filter and add these effects. Nice. The next sound is a cool laser beam that I'll be using as the main bass of the song. I'm using a saw wave with an 8-voice unison, pitched it down an octave, shaped the envelope like this, and route the oscillator to filter 1 and use this comb filter. I also shaped the LFO like this and routed that to the filter cutoff. And I'm also using these onboard effects. I'm also using that same oscillator layer effect that I did in the first track, but this time it's a saw wave pitched up 7 semitones with some unison on it. And once I made the first patch, I just duplicated it and made small tweaks to it so I could give it some new sounds. Work smarter, not harder. I made a few variants of that laser patch, like this riser laser, and this wobble bass. And all I did was change the LFO shapes. The last bass I used was this simple Reese style bass. It's just two basic shapes, pitch them down an octave, envelope shaped like this, route them to a low pass filter with the LFO routed to the cutoff, and add all of these effects. Sounds pretty cool. But now that all of the basses are done, I routed all of them to the same effects chain for a cohesive polish. It's just a few EQs and compressors, and a few special effects to bring out the sound some more. The hard part of this is now arranging the basses into a catchy bass line. So here's what I came up with. And just like the other track, I'm layering these basses with the bass patch. And after I made the pattern, I consolidated the bass and added a few effects to it like free filter, this EQ, and a reverb. I'll be using automations to kind of shape how the sound goes. And now we gotta add some drums to the song. So I'm using this punchy kick and I'm playing a 4 on the floor rhythm with it. I'm also using this top loop layer to play the hi-hats, and I added these cymbals to spice up the track later. I also made my own drum pattern for a more UK garage inspired beat section, and it made for a cool beat switch. And to make sure your drums have a quick punchy sound, I recommend using a transient shaper to keep those sounds nice and short. Lastly, I added a bunch of effects for transitions. some effects hits, and even some quick riser sounds. And here's the beat. Final beat. Alright, so we're going to get into some Praxi lore for this. I've talked about this before on the channel, but I just want to bring it up again. Back in the day, before I started my YouTube channel and even before I started rapping, my first music venture was dubstep. Before I was Praxi Plays, I was Praxior, the dubstep producer. And of course, I indulged in the Western brostep style of Skrillex and Excision, but I was obsessed with the UK dubstep from artists like Scream, Benga, and MLK. Back in the day, I used to watch those hour-long mixes on the Get Darker channel, and even the mixes from UKF Dubstep. Ugh, take me back, good times. And when I was working on this beat, I was kind of inspired by that dark UK dubstep sound with a more gritty, Reese-sounding bass. But Praxi, isn't this video about UK bass? Why are you making dubstep? Because why not? Fuck it, bro, let's have fun. And Reese basses are pretty common in UK bass tracks, so I still think this counts. And to top it all off, all of the sounds in this project were made with stock FL Studio plugins and a Dream. No third-party plugins at all. This beat is going to be at 135 BPM, a little bit faster than the other two. Now, I understand that UK bass tends to have 4-on-the-floor drum patterns, but that isn't always the case. For my track, I was inspired by this drum loop I found in the UK bass kit. I liked how it sounded, but I thought it would be cooler if it was shifted over a bar. And now that I got that rhythm, I shaped my drums around it. It kinda has a dubstep style drum rhythm with a kick on the 1 and a snare on the 3, and not a 4-on-the-floor beat. And next I added this gritty Reese bass in GMS. I started off with the bass preset in GMS, but I changed a bunch of the parameters around. Here's all the stuff that I changed. I put the attack at 0.30%, decay at 0.48, and the sustain and release at 0. I also changed the cutoff filter to 0.91, and 0.24% for the resonance. I also added some distortion and stereo. I gave it some effects as well, like some EQs, a cranked sound godizer, destructor for some bit crush, flangus to smooth out the bass, stereo shaper, and another EQ. I also used Fruity Love Filter and Fruity Reverb for some filter sweeps and reverb sweeps automated throughout the song. And for this track, I made a version of the bass patch with good old 3x oscillator, and I layered that with the main bass. Lastly, I wanted to add a few melodic elements to this beat, so I made this melody with a flex preset. I also added a bunch of these effects sounds I got from the pack and routed them all to the same mixer. I added a limiter, a delay, an EQ, and a stereo shaper to it. And I also used this deep space resonant preset from Citrus for this cool effect sound. The last sound I added were a few risers and some cool drum fills. And lastly, if you're interested in anything that I did in this video, all of the songs and FLPs will be on my Patreon. And here's the final beat.